My name is Andrew and I scored 100% in my English Literature GCSE for the paper 1 and overall got a grade 9. I'm now a Cambridge University student and I wanted to go through all the notes and the flashcards that I use to unlock this top grade. So I'm going to give you 3 main tips which you can still implement even if your exam is coming up over the next couple of weeks. So this pretty much works for last minute preparation as well. The first bit of advice I'm going to give to you is use short quotes. So a lot of people make this mistake with English Lit. They get confused and they don't really know how to prepare, to be honest. So they think it's sort of a memory competition. Oh, I need to learn the most complicated quotes. I need to learn at least a couple of lines for each quote, because if I copy down word for word something that somebody has said in the text in my essay, it will come across really well. However, this is absolutely not true because, like I said, English Literature GCSE is not a memory competition. So I'd recommend you to choose less than 10 words for each quote, and I'm going to show you in just a second how I learnt my quotes. Choose them carefully. So I think it's better to learn fewer quotes that can be used in several situations than learning by force lots and lots of quotes. And make sure that each quote can be used for 1, characters, so if you're having a character-based question, or and also that each quote can be used for several themes. So I'm going to give an example from Mr. Burling from Inspector Calls. He says, "Absolutely unsinkable," referring to the Titanic, which obviously did sink. And even if you've not read this play, then that's completely fine. The example is still relevant because I can talk about all the things you can say about these 2 words. So the quote is absolutely unsinkable. So the first thing we could do is we could talk about the character of Mr. Burling. So we could talk about his opinions on class. It's obviously dramatic irony because the Titanic does sink. And thirdly, how he's overly proud. And it's important to know the context of this quote. So, because really, see, when you're using quotes in your essays, you're going to back up the points that you've just made. So if you don't know where it comes from in the play or what they're talking about, it really does not help very much. Then there's a second quote from Inspector Calls I learnt, which I use quite often, which was bitterly, "I suppose we're all nice people now," which is what, 8 words, and it's by Sheila. So this represents the theme of the young versus the old. It shows character development, how she's changed from the start to the end of the play. It includes a stage direction, which is important if you're writing about theatre. It's important to show that you know actually that this text, this piece of work, is not a book, it's a theatre show, and by referencing a stage direction, you can highlight that you know there's a difference between these 2 texts. It also talks about, this quote is about social responsibility and reputation. So that's, what, five themes already. And the final quote for Inspector Calls that I thought was a really good example, and I used a lot in my essays, was, "They will be taught in blood and fire and anguish." So once again, this quote is using apocalyptic language. It's something the inspector says. So we know which character it is. It's using apocalyptic language. It's like the Book of Revelations. So Priestley makes the inspector almost as a godlike character. It uses a tricolon, blood and fire and anguish. And it gives power and dynamism. And finally, it's got imagery. So these, even if you've not, like I said, even if you've not read this play, it doesn't matter, because you can see that each of the quotes that I chose, I learned a few more than just that, but every single quote that I learned for GCSE, I knew that it would be very versatile, and that no matter if I had an essay on a sort of device, well, it probably won't be that specific, but if I had a stylistic question or a character question, whatever, with the quotes that I had memorized, I knew I had relevant ones for any possible essay that come up, and also I knew how to write about them and what devices were being used. So the flashcards I use, which I'm going to show you now, I use them mainly for to learn about devices and themes. So this bit, obviously, if your exam's coming next week, is completely fine. You don't have to do these. But I'll show you, this is really, really simple. If it's the wrong way around on the camera, which it might be, I'll read it to you anyway. So for example, this was Macbeth. What I did is I wrote the name of the character, so the witches, in the top right, the act and scene for plays, so where it came from in the play, but if you don't know this, it doesn't really matter. You can just cover up this bit. You just need to know roughly where it comes from. And then the start of the quote here, and then the rest here. So, fair, it says here, fair is foul, and foul is fair. Again here, the soldier in Macbeth, his brandished, and I don't remember this one, because I did do my GCSEs ages ago, his brandished steel, which smoked with bloody execution. So I've done all my quotes like this. I'll carry on showing you a few more, but you see that it's not very aesthetic. I don't ever make aesthetic notes. But you don't even have to make flashcards, because I obviously spent time making this little thing in the top, color coding. If you've not got much time, literally just make a few short quotes and maybe 5 to 10, and make sure you memorize those, what context you use them in. I'll quickly look through. So that's me actually learning the quotes. And for example, Mr. Burling, we've got our in spectacles again. Let's remember, a hard-headed man of business, something like that. A hard-headed, practical man of business. Absolutely unsinkable, like we were just talking about. The next one is a man has to find his own way in the world, or something like that. A man has to make his own way, has to look after himself. So this one's quite long, could have cut that one. Community and all that nonsense. Anyway, so here I've clearly done them by characters. Now we get to Mrs. Burling, girls of that class, girls of that sort, girls of that class. See, I did this ages ago, and because they're so short, when I see the first word of them, I can still remember it. I mean, it's 2025 now, and I did my GCSEs in 2019. So I've done quite a lot of flashcards here. You could have honestly done literally just a few quotes per person and maybe have this many, 5 to 10. Even less, really 5, I reckon, if you're really struggling and it's last minute. But definitely for each play, but I think definitely just quality over quantity is massively important here. And then finally for flashcards, what I do is, I've got my Jekyll and Hyde ones here, is that I would just quickly mind map. This is not as necessary as the first ones. The first ones are necessary in my opinion, but why does the artisan drink gin when he was alone? What's here is I'm not actually giving the start of the quote and learning it. I've already learned it with the other flashcards, so I'd have one for each set text, one set of flashcards for each set text, and then I'd have here, why does artisan drink gin when he was alone? And then I've got reasons here. So I've got one set of flashcards to learn the actual quotes, and another set of flashcards to know when to use these quotes, know what these quotes represent, know how to use them in an essay. But this, like I said, is secondary. The most important thing is to actually learn the quotes. And I'm also looking back now, I did so many flashcards and I didn't need to do this much. Yeah, I didn't need to do this much. I've got a lot of flashcards going on here, and it was good, but it was really a bit too much. So my second theme is get to know your set text. So this is not so last minute. This is what hopefully you've been doing throughout the year, but even if you have time in this coming exam period, just make sure you know what is going on, because you cannot write an essay about something if you do not understand the characters. I know it sounds obvious. I would go through, ideally throughout the year, every scene in chapter. This would be good preparation for the unseen extract. So you could just kind of mentally ask yourself, if you've got time, write notes. What is happening? What is the main purpose of this extract? How is it important to the structure of the play, of the book? And how do characters or plot develop? So this is just a mental question you should be asking yourself. Don't necessarily need to write massive notes, just mentally kind of have an idea of what's going on. For example, the porter's scene in Macbeth is what came up in my English literature unseen extract, and I'd already done this. So this is something that I've kind of been working on through the year. I'd been through all the scenes and been thinking mentally and even writing notes. Okay, this is what this scene means. This is what it represents, blah, blah, blah. This is what, all the questions I just asked. What is happening? What is the purpose? How is it important to structure? Is there any character or plot development? I was doing this the entire way through for all the scenes, which was quite a thorough work, which obviously in these kind of last weeks before the exams you won't have time to do, but just have a think. You can even ask ChatGPT, something like that, and then just read through summaries. But anyway, so I had the porter's scene in Macbeth, and I already knew this. So it was massively advantageous to have already done this work and done this thinking before I got into the exam. So the porter's scene, even if you're not doing Macbeth, doesn't matter. I'll quickly just go through these notes. It was comic relief following Duncan's murder. It had foreshadowing because it talked about the doom and moral decay of Macbeth. The porter uses imagery of hell, which foreshadows the chaos that the king's murder brings to Scotland. The themes of hell, guilt, equivocation are very present, and it also is increasing suspense because it delays the revelation of his death. So in any unseen extract, well, I don't know if that's quite the right word, but when you get even an extract in the exam, you have to write a commentary or you have to write an essay about it. These are the sort of questions you should be asking yourself. And don't worry, because in the exam, do not think, oh, I don't know so much about this. Don't let yourself get in a frenzy of thinking, I don't know so much about this passage, I don't know what to write about. Stop, take a deep breath, and ask yourself the following questions. So, what is this character or the character's thinking? Or what is the audience thinking? What information do they kind of think, situate yourself at which point in the book you're in or play, the start, middle, end. And think about what the main moments of change are. Think about if there is any change, how is this extract serving in the text as a whole. So in this specific extract of the Porter scene in Macbeth, who is knocking? What do they know? How much they know at this point in the play? What is the audience thinking? And finally, I'm going to be talking about reading exemplar content. Like I said, first of all, the first piece of advice I think is probably the most important, no, it's definitely the most important, is learning lots of short quotes. So you've got, well, not lots, but at least 5 per set text, ideally 10. But the biggest and most important tip is learning the quotes and doing quality over quantity. However, if you also have time, it's important to read through exemplar content. I kind of went to town on this, so I've literally got so many here, but I was doing a lot of revision, which I don't think all of it was necessarily 100% necessary. So going through exemplar content, especially from the exam board, can be extremely helpful. If you just search up grade 9 content from AQA or EdXL or OCR, whatever, from Macbeth essay, there'll be something. If you search up Macbeth essay, grade 9, or whichever grade you're aiming for, and then your exam board, something will come up. If not, it's easier than ever nowadays because we've got ChatGPT and AI that can write good essays for you. So I go through these and I would highlight all the words that you think, or parts that you enjoy, and think that you think you could potentially use in essays. So for example, this one, the question is, how does Shakespeare present gender roles through Macbeth and Lady Macbeth? And this is honestly an incredible essay. So try not to let yourself get intimidated. But you see here, what I was mentioning earlier on is actually true. I've highlighted, I'm speaking so fast, but what I said earlier on was actually true. So I've highlighted here, for example, one of the sentences starts, coupled with the imperative give. And the quote that they're using to back this up is literally just one word quote. Another one, she explains, the adjective infirm connotes ideas of weakness, which reveals Lady Macbeth's opinion of Macbeth. In Act 1, Scene 5, where she demands for them to unsex me here, 3-word quote. A lot of the time, if you're giving a short quote, it shows you know exactly which part of the quote is relevant to back up your point. Sometimes if you just kind of write out long sentences that you've memorized, it shows the examiner that you don't actually know exactly which part is backing up your point and which part is relevant. So other examples here is the superlative dearer, the pronoun chuck. Lady Macbeth is too weak to handle the plan. So go through, highlight parts that you think either you could reuse for your essays or that inspired you. And you're even allowed to kind of reuse this in your own essays. Equally, if you want to, this is something I found online in my GCSEs. It was somebody had very kindly made like a brainstorm, I guess, of each scene. This was quite a tremendous amount of work, I imagine it took to make this. If you find resources like this, really have to strongly use the 80-20 rule and not just spend hours and hours and hours and hours studying and just ignoring other subjects, just to go through every single tiny detail of a play or a set text. At the end of the day, it's just important that you know what's going on. You don't need to go every single tiny detail. So I literally just went through this whole page and I just highlighted this bit that I thought was good and this bit. And the rest I read through quickly, but I didn't have time to properly study. Apart from that, other resources I've got here are sort of similar, just mind mapping mind mapping the sorts of quotes that the quotes that I learned about what I could write about them in an essay. I've really written a lot here, so this is quite extensive. You don't need to write it in full sentences. You can just write dot dot, like a point, about which themes each quote links to. So it's kind of what we were talking earlier on, and what I was also doing with these flashcards. Reminder, you don't need to do all of this preparation and the flashcards. I was really just nerding it out in year 11 because I definitely wanted the level top grade, but I don't think it's necessary. Well, I don't think it's necessary to do all of this to get the top grade. That's why I'm telling you which ones are the most important. Other than that, I'm flicking through my resources right now. The last thing I would say is just make sure that you are aware of how much time you've got the exam and how much time you should dedicate to each question, because you cannot let yourself be too perfectionist and in one question spend ages and ages and ages trying to write something completely perfect, and it's a 10-mark question and there's 70 other marks on the paper that you've ignored. So it's important to know how long you should dedicate to each question and be really strict with yourself for that, because if you submit an unfinished essay but it's mainly finished, like it's pretty good, then you'll lose a couple marks for that. But if you write fine, the first essay is completely perfect, you include everything you want to, but then because of that you don't get to do the second essay, you're cutting out half of the marks of the entire paper, which is going to massively hurt your grade. So you've got to have some kind of take a step back sometimes and be like, okay, I need to leave this first essay by itself like this. Yes, maybe if I don't complete it, don't write the conclusion, I'll lose 1 or 2 marks, but it's really not that deep. And that is honestly everything for today. I'm wishing you the best of luck for your upcoming English exams. I have all faith in you, because if you're watching this video, and especially if you got to the end of the video, it definitely means you're motivated to score highly. So use this motivation, study smart, and also my final tip is watch the Mr. Bruff video where he sings through important quotes from In Spectacles, because that actually helped me so much. I'm not going to sing it, but I'll put it in the description. Thank you so much for your attention, and take care. Good luck. Bye.